live audience of listeners like you. We hope you continue to find this time inspiring, educational, and entertaining. There is no admission charge. However, donations will be accepted to defray the cost of the modest box lunch available in the narthex at the end of the recital, if you choose to partake. Gifts will also be gratefully received for the St. Mark's Organ Revitalization Fund. Today's menu, if you will, is rather unique compared to those we've presented before. The first half of the program, if you're looking at your sheet, will include some relative information regarding the instrument that we're going to hear today, the Steiner Rec Opus 100, how it is built, how it is used, and some of the implications of the repairs that need to be done may affect our congregation here at St. Mark's. You're going to hear myself play, you'll hear Chris Mickelson play, and Alice Reel, and I hope you enjoy this afternoon's lovely recital. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just to repeat what Pastor Triello mentioned earlier, you are welcome and encouraged to move closer so that not only you can see the photos on the screen here, but also more closely see the organ. Later on in the program, when we start playing, we also encourage you to try sitting in different spots. You're welcome to move around just to hear how the organ sounds in different parts of the sanctuary. The room that we are in is part of the organ. The acoustics really affect what you hear. So later on, we will encourage you to see what happens when you move your spots. For now, we're going to start with a organ demonstration. We're going to show off our Steiner Rec organ and all the parts that make it unique. So Chris Mickelson, St. Mark's retired organist, he is going to demonstrate. He's going to go up to the bench, and he's going to start playing our organ.
Keys.
So go ahead and sit down, Chris, and start playing some of the keys. Let's see what happens. That's odd. Do you hear anything? Maybe, I don't know, Chris, maybe you should try turning it on. Oh, that sounded promising.
The lights are on.
Okay, start playing again.
Still nothing.
Well, I can hear the keys working, but I don't hear any sound right now. I wonder, maybe, what are those buttons, Chris? Maybe you should turn it off all the way. Yeah, they light up. I think we need three components here. I think we need to turn it on, then we need to push some of those buttons, and then we need to push the keys in that order. Let's see what happens. What happened, Chris? It's going away. Did you leave it turned on?
It's off now. Why didn't I know about that feature?
Let's turn the key again. Okay, it sounds like the air is coming back. It's working. Okay, that's promising. So if you were paying attention, there are some important components to a pipe organ so it will sound. So unlike a piano, Karen is at the piano. Go ahead and play something. So all a pianist has to do is sit down and push the keys, and if you know how a piano works, there are hammers that hit strings, and it starts playing. You don't have to turn it on. The organ, well, it's called a pipe organ for a reason. It has a set of pipes that will make a sound, and you can see some of the pipes up here. But it also needs a source of air to go through those pipes to make them work. So on our organ, we have a blower. There's a door behind the choir loft, you may have noticed. And if you open that door, there is a motor and a reservoir, and the motor creates air into the bellows, and then that goes into the organ to power the pipes. Historically, before electricity, you would have people that were pumping the bellows to make the organ work. So that is just one picture of what it looked like. You would often have more than one person doing it because some of these organs were really big and they had lots of pipes to power, and the more you had playing, the more air you needed. So we're lucky we don't have to do that here. We can just turn on the key and turn on the air. Another component which we saw Chris doing were the keys. So when you push a key down, if the organ is on and the air is there, the key opens a pallet underneath a specific pipe, and that allows the air to go through the pipe and make the sound. Now, Chris, can you turn off the stops? So if he just pushes a key, the organ is on, and he's going to push some keys for us, but we shouldn't hear anything. That's because we don't have any stops activated. So on our organ, those buttons that you see light up, those are called stops, and they are each related to a specific set of pipes that play a certain sound. And so when the stop is activated, it allows the air to go through a specific set of pipes to create that sound. And then what's cool about an organ is you can play multiple stops at the same time. You can layer them together in different combinations and create all the unique sounds that you hear. So this is a kind of small diagram, but it shows how the organ works. We have what is called a mechanical action organ, which means the keys are connected mechanically to the pipes. Many organs today are electric action, so when you push a key down, it uses electric currents to open the pallets, and that's why you can see really big organs where the organist is like here, and the pipes are on the other side of the room. Our organ, as you can see, Chris has to sit right there by the pipes because the connections, the mechanical connections, are all right there attached to the keyboard. So this is really small, but if you can just follow along. You have a blower, like I described, that produces the air. It goes into a reservoir, goes all the way up to a wind chest, and it kind of just sits underneath the pipes, waiting for the organist. The organist pulls a stop, and so on historical organs, pulling a stop, you literally pull a knob out. It moves something called a slider underneath the pipes. It has holes in it, so when you pull it out, the holes line up with the bottom of the pipes. So that way the air can get through. And then when you push the key, that allows the air to go through those pipes. So that is just in a nutshell, the really simple version of how a mechanical action organ works.
So when they say pulling all stops,
Literally pulling the stops, yes. So I've asked this question before, if you have seen this presentation, or if you've read your handout, don't cheat, but does anybody have a guess on how many pipes we actually have in this organ? It's more than what you can see right now. Yes? Somebody guessed 700. That's a lot, anybody guess any more? There's quite a bit more than 700. This organ has 2107 pipes, 2,107 pipes. And this is just fun to show. These are from inside our organ taken last summer. And as you can see, the pipes are all kinds of shapes and sizes. Some are made of metal. Some are open at the top. Some have caps on the top. And if you put a cap on top of a pipe, it's going to make it sound an octave lower, I believe. We have wooden pipes. We have, these are special kinds where they're supposed to be really long, but because we don't have the vertical space, they actually go inside themselves to save space. And those are actually reed pipes. We'll talk about the different types in a second. But these are some of our trumpet pipes right here. So you may have, if you've come to previous organ concerts, you may have heard people use some of these terms. So I just wanted to define them briefly. The console is where Chris is sitting. It's like the command center of the organ, where all the buttons are and all the keys. The manual is a keyboard, and it's what you play with your hands. I always think of the Spanish word manos for hands, manual. And then the pedal board is what you play with your feet. Each of those pipes is a specific pitch on the instrument. It corresponds to a note on the keyboard. A rank of pipes is all the pipes that go on the keyboard. So if you have just one keyboard, all the naturals and accidentals have an individual pipe. Our organ, the compass, which is the number of keys on a keyboard, is 58. So it goes all the way up to an A. A piano goes up to a C. And most organs have 61 keys on the compass, and they go up to a high C. So ours is kind of unique that it only goes up to that A. The pedal is only a 32-note pedal, and it goes up to a G. So that's something interesting. A stop it refers to the rank of pipes. It's a specific sound of pipes. So each of those buttons will activate a unique sound, and the pipes are shaped in a distinct manner. So they're going to look and sound different from each other. Anyway, more about the ranks. So you might see some numbers related to the organ stops. And so the way that works is the longest pipe of a rank, so the lowest note, is going to be the longest pipe. And then as you go up the keyboard, the pipes are going to get shorter. So if you are playing some notes that are written at concert pitch, so I see like a middle C on the keyboard on the staff, and I played middle C, an 8-foot rank is going to sound like the note that you see. Yep, what Chris just played. So the longest pipe in that rank is going to be 8 feet long, and we have some 8-foot pipes on our organ. So Chris, why don't you play an 8-foot stop so we can hear what that sounds like? A 4-foot rank, how many feet do you think the longest pipe in a 4-foot rank is? It's going to be 4 feet. Is it going to sound higher or lower than the 8-foot if it's shorter? It's going to be an octave higher. So Chris, why don't you play a 4-foot rank? Mm-hmm. And then going along those lines, the 2-foot rank is going to be 2 octaves higher. So 8, 4, 2 all together. And then we go lower, and that's typically in the pedal stops with the bass notes. So 16-foot, the longest pipe is going to be how many feet? 16. And that's going to be 1 octave lower than the pitch that is written. And then some organs even go to 32. And we do not have a physical 32-foot pipe. We don't have the space for it. But if you look in the choir loft, those black boxes are speakers. And they power our electronic 32-foot stops. So Chris, could you just play the 32 so we can feel it? You're not going to hear it, but you might feel it. Sometimes we get a tambourine rattle because we keep a tambourine on top of accidentally it starts playing and it scares me when I'm practicing, but so that's our unofficial tambourine stop. But you don't hear the 32 by itself. It's usually layered with a lot of other stops, and it just provides that gravity to the sounds. Okay. We're almost done with the terminology, I promise. A division. So an organ is actually multiple organs combined together. This kind of blew my mind when I started. So some organs have multiple keyboards. We have 3 manuals, and they are all connected to a specific set of stops. So on our organ, and this will change depending on the organ you're at, the bottom keyboard is called the grate. And all the stops on the right side of the organ are connected to that keyboard. And the swell is the middle keyboard, and those stops are located on the left side of the console. And it's special, it's called an enclosed division. So those stops are actually kind of in a box in the middle of the organ. So Chris is gonna play, and then listen to what happens when he closes the pedal that's underneath the organ. So he's opening the swell pedal. And now he's closing the swell pedal. And if you come up really close, there are swell shutters inside. See the grate just above Chris's head? There are wooden shutters that open and close when you push the swell pedal, and that allows the sound to crescendo and decrescendo. So it adds some more color to the organ. Otherwise, the stops are all the same sounds. And the only way to make the organ louder or softer is by adding stops or taking stops away. So the swell lets us have those crescendos. The pedal division is all the stops related to the pedal. Some organs share stops with the other divisions. Our organ has a lot of pedal stops that are called independent. They're only associated with the pedal. And then we also have a solo division. If you've noticed those horizontal trumpets sticking out that are really, really loud, they're part of our solo division. Chris is going to demonstrate. And we have some couplers on that division too. It's gonna allow him to play if he plays a note, you're gonna hear the note that is 8 foot at concert pitch. And he can also turn on the 16 foot, so you're gonna hear the note an octave below. And the 4 foot, which is the note an octave above. So what happens if you push all of those together for the trumpets? So you're just playing one note, right? And you're hearing all 3 of those at the same time. So that's a unique feature. It's pretty loud, so we don't use it very often. But we'll come up to some of more unique stops a little bit later. But as I said, coupling is really special. It lets you play stops from one division on another keyboard. So we have a swell to grate coupler. So some of the stops, the sounds from the swell, you can combine them with stops on the grate and play it all from the same keyboard, which is very useful. You can also put stops from the grate and swell onto the pedals so you can hear them at the same time as whatever pedal stops that you have. All right, so now we're just gonna go over all the different types of pipes that we have that create the different sounds. There are two main categories of organ pipes, flues and reeds. The flues are like big whistles, and kind of like the ones that you see that are vertical in the front of the organ. And so basically the air goes through them and it creates the sounds. The reeds have tongues, they're little metal tongues that the air goes in and the tongue vibrates, kind of like a reed orchestral instrument. These pipes are not from our organ, they're from another organ, but if you can imagine, they are all the same pitch. They look very different from each other, but they're all going to play a C-sharp pitch. So a lot of things affect the sounds. The material the pipe is made of, how wide the pipe is, how narrow the pipe is, how long the pipe is, even whether they have these little lips or holes in them. Some of them have little caps on the top that affect the pitch. So we're going to take a look at part of the flute family, the flutes. And these are going to be very foundational. You're going to hear them, and they don't have a lot of overtones. And these are all the flute stops on our Steiner Rec organ. So I'm just going to name them, and Chris is going to play them individually so you can hear what they sound like individually. We have a 16-foot sub-bass on the pedal. We have a 16-foot Gedeckt Palmer on the pedal, and it's also shared with the grate. We have an 8-foot bass flute on the pedal. So as you can see, they're getting up an octave each time the number rises. We have an 8-foot roar flute on the grates. We have an 8-foot bourdon on the swell. We have a 4-foot whole flutes on the grates. And we have a 4-foot flutes harmonique on the swell. So it's really cool to hear them individually because when you combine them together, they kind of blend with all the other stops. But they're really neat. I really love, my favorite is the flute harmonique. It's really special. The principal stops, they are the principal sound of the organ. So each organ, their principal stops are going to be unique to that organ. And they're not really imitating an instrument or anything, they're the organ sound. So we have principals on the pedal. Chris can just go through those. And then we have principals on the grate, and there's something called a principal chorus where you layer the 8, 4, 2, and sometimes the mixtures that we'll talk about later all together for that traditional organ sound. So Chris, could you show us the principal chorus on the grates? All right, going up the flute family, we have the strings, and we have those on the swell. We have a gamba, 8-foot stop. And the string family is, if you look at the pipes, they're going to be narrow, and they're going to have a lot more high overtones, so they're kind of thin sounding. And we often pair the string stop with the celeste on the swell. The celeste is tuned slightly sharp, so that when you play them together, there's like a beating effect and a little tremolo effect. So go ahead and show us the celeste with the gamba. And then we have what's called a hybrid stop. It's going to have characteristics of the flutes and the strings, and those are our Gims horns. So we have an 8-foot Gims horn on the grates. Was that the grate or the swell?
That's a swell.
Oh, that was the 2-foot. It was pretty high. Can you play the 8-foot on the grate now? I love this stop too. It's really beautiful. Okay, now we have the reed stops. So they're classified. We have solo reeds that are super loud and you don't want them to play with a lot of other stops. And then we have the chorus reeds that blend well and kind of just add some foundation and color and timbre. So on the swell, we have the 8-foot crumb horn. It's going to be very buzzy sounding. And then we have the 8-foot trumpet on the pedal. And the 4-foot shalmai on the pedal. And so it really cuts through whatever else you're playing. And then the other reeds we have, there's an 8-foot on the trumpet, or 8-foot trumpet on the grates. We have an 8-foot oboe stop that can blend, or it can also be used as a solo as well. We have a 16-foot bassoon on the swell. And then on the pedal, we have a 16-foot dulcian. And then a 16-foot posaune, which is like a big trombone. It's really loud. So when you combine the reeds together, that's called a reed chorus. So Chris, could you show us the reed chorus on the swell? So the 16/8 together. And then the reed chorus on the pedal. So we have the 16/8, 4 reeds on the pedal. Okay, finally, last but not least, we have mutations and mixtures. So what's unique about the organ is it's built on the harmonic series. So mutation stops allow you to play, you usually pair them with unison pitches, other foundation stops, but they add overtones to the sound. So we have a sesquiotera 2 2/3 on the grates. And so when Chris plays that by itself, it's going to play 2 different pitches. It's going to play the 5th above the note. So if he plays middle C, it's actually going to sound the G above middle C. And then another pitch above that, the 3rd above. So you're going to hear that, but in octaves above. And then we have a 2 2/3 on the swell, the nasset, and that's just going to be the 5th above. So that just allows us to have color and more unique sounds when we play our repertoire. And then we have what's called mixture stops, and those are mixtures. They're combinations of pipes. So when you play one note, you could hear up to 6 different pipes sounding, and they're going to be high-pitched, and they're going to be the upper harmonics. So why don't you play the mixture on the grate by itself, Chris? And then the mixture in the swell is actually going to be even higher. So then when you combine it with the other stops, so like the principal chorus, it's going to add brilliance, it's going to add some volume to the sound. Okay, and now our special stops that, not every organ has all of these. They're all unique. We have a tremulant on our swell, and that allows a vibrato effect. So especially when you have a solo sound, it helps it carry more. So why don't you do a tremulant on the oboe, Chris? The interesting thing is when you're sitting at the console and you're playing the tremulant, you can't hear that. It sounds much more clear out here in the sanctuary, just the way the acoustics work. Everyone knows about the cymbal stern, the star at the top. Chris is going to demonstrate that. We have a special cymbal stern. We can control the speed. You can make it go super fast or slow. He can adjust the volume, how loud or soft it is. And he can even delay when it starts. You can set it so it'll start a couple seconds after you push the button. Or you can have it start immediately. So we have a lot of control over that. This is an electronic one. If you go inside the organ, there's little metal bells that get tapped. Finally, we already demonstrated the trumpets, so we don't have to do that again. So that is an overview of the organ. I guess the last thing I would add is, like I said, all organs are unique. So if you go to another concert somewhere and you see their stops, some organs are modeled after historical organs, and they have stops that you might find in 17th century Germany. Other organs are what we call symphonic organs, and they're going to have more stops that are orchestral based. They're trying to imitate flutes and strings and tubas and big instruments in the orchestra. Ours is not. A lot of the families that I named, the strings, the flutes, the reeds, they're not really related to a specific instrument. They are more related to the type of sound you're going to hear and how many overtones. Okay, so this instrument is kind of a hybrid. It's built so that you can play repertoire from different centuries and different countries. So there's a lot of stops related to German organs, and there's a lot of stops related to French organs. So it's a very interesting instrument to play. After the next half of our program, we're going to play some pieces so you can hear some of what we just talked about. And then we invite everybody to come up afterwards, and you can come close to the organ and ask questions and check it out. So on to the next part of our program. Karen is going to begin with her pieces.
Before I bring any information about the pieces that I will play today, I would like to mention that some of you have mentioned you would like to know specifically what may be some of the particulars that need attention or revitalization or renovation or replacement in this instrument. And I encourage you to ask Alice and Chris in the narthex following our presentation today, because they both are masters at describing those things, and in obvious case, much better at it than I am. So please feel free to ask either one of them. Also, again, if you feel like getting up and walking around so that you can hear the different resonance in this room, the acoustics in this room change from at the bench to the loft, to up front, to the center, to the back. So feel free. If you would like to come up and watch playing, you're very welcome to make that part of your, perambulation, I guess it would be, your little walk around. And you can see specifically what the choir hears, what we hear at the bench, and then at the back. It's quite different. And when this room is full of people versus completely empty, it's very different. As Alice mentioned to begin with, the room is part of the organ. It does create the sound as well. And off we go. The first piece that I will play for you this afternoon, Herr Jesu Christ, dich zu uns wendt, by Johann Gottfried Walter. Walter is writing a very concise and expressive example of the Lutheran chorale prelude tradition of the Baroque period. Based on the well-known German hymn, Lord Jesus Christ, be present now, the piece was intended to prepare the congregation for worship and the hearing of Scripture. The chorale's text is a prayer for Christ's guidance, asking the hearts and minds be opened to divine truth. Walter, a cousin and contemporary of Johann Sebastian Bach, was one of the leading German organists and music theorists of the early 18th century. Though often overshadowed by Bach, Walter played a significant role in shaping German organ music and was admired for his contrapuntal skill and pedagogical writings. His chorale settings frequently combine clarity of melody with graceful ornamentation and lively inner voices. Particularly, this piece that you will hear today has a specific strong chorale line and a nice floating obligato above it with an accompanimental pedal detail. In this setting, the chorale tune emerges very clearly amid this flowing accompaniment, and it gives the music both motion and devotional warmth. The texture reflects the balanced craftsmanship typical of the German High Baroque, where even relatively brief liturgical works are infused with expressive detail. The piece serves not only as an introduction to worship, but also as a meditation on the hymn's prayerful text, inviting listeners into a spirit of attentiveness and reverence. The registration for this work, which you're going to hear, features reeds. On the swell, which is the middle manual, you'll hear the crumhorn, 8-foot, and the bourdon, 8-foot. On the great manual, the roar flute, the octaven, 2 foot, and the swell to great coupler, so that both are joined together. One thing that we might mention, when you use the crescendo pedal that you can push back and forth to change volume, that particularly only works with the swell manual unless it's coupled to the great, in which case then you can use that for both together. It's an effect that I try to use a lot, because otherwise you cannot crescendo and decrescendo just on the bottom manual. The pedal line will be sub-bass 16, bass flute 8, and we're going to couple the great to the pedal on that as well. Here we go. That was not an intentional demonstration of how to push the wrong buttons. There is a bank, a memory bank of recorded stops that will always come on when you push a specific button. On the left-hand side of the console, you see the red digital lights. There are about 30 different banks, and on each bank there are 8 separate possibilities that you can choose to arrange. In my seating myself there, I pushed the wrong bank. That's why the first half of that sounded a little crazy, and it took me a while to be able to find a spot where I could renegotiate what I had to do there. So that's a good demonstration of making sure you must always have the right buttons pushed at the right place at the right time. My second piece, a lot less involved, by Wilbur Held, Of the Father's Love Begotten. Held's setting of this draws upon one of the oldest melodies in Christian musical tradition, the plain song tune Divinum Mysterium, which dates to the medieval church. The text itself originates even earlier, adapted from a hymn by the 4th century Roman poet Aurelius Pudentius. Its soaring poetry reflects on the eternal nature of Christ, the Alpha and the Omega, existing before creation and reigning forevermore. Held's treatment preserves the reverent and timeless character of the chant, while enriching it with warm 20th century harmonies and flowing organ textures. Rather than overwhelming the simplicity of the melody, the arrangement allows the ancient tune to unfold naturally, creating an atmosphere of contemplation and quiet majesty. Subtle contrapuntal lines and carefully shaped crescendos give the work both structural clarity and emotional depth. A respected American organist and composer, Wilbur Held was known for writing music that balanced accessibility with craftsmanship. In this setting, he transforms a familiar Christian hymn, Christmas hymn, into a meditative prelude suitable for Advent or Christmastide worship. The result is music that bridges centuries of sacred tradition, inviting listeners into reflection on the mystery and wonder of the Incarnation. The registration for this work features flutes and strings. On the swell or the middle manual is simply one bourdon 8. On the grate, the roar flute, and it's coupled with the bourdon on the swell. The pedal, the Gedacht Palmer, 16-foot, and both the swell and grate manuals are coupled to that pedal, single stop. So you can tell if there's only one particular stop on any of the manuals, it's going to be a very sparse, very clean sound. And here we have Wilbur Held.
I'll play fast. I just realized I'm in the centerfold. That's scary. I'm just going to play one piece, but it's many variations. Pachelbel was born and died in Nuremberg, Germany. He was a preeminent organist, composer, and teacher of the Southern School of German Organ Music. A Lutheran, he spent 5 years in Vienna at St. Stephen's Cathedral, where he was influenced by Catholic church music, and in particular the music of the Italian school, which was all the rage at the time. He also spent a number of years in Lutherland and the places Bach walked, such as Eisenach and Erfurt. I think he spent 12 years in Erfurt. He was a teacher of Bach's big brother, Johann Christoph. In fact, he lived in his house and bought the house when Christoph moved. Pachelbel was invited with other prominent organists of the day to the elder Bach's wedding in Ohrdruf to provide the music. Pachelbel may very well have encountered Sebastian on that visit, who would have been 9 years old at the time. While in Erfurt, he wrote most of his chorale preludes and fugues, as well as partitas, chaconnes, and toccatas, which were part of his job description. It is uncertain the origin of was Gott tut, which means what God ordains is good indeed, basically. Authorities disagree, but it may have been one of the 4 sets of partitas written upon the death of his first wife and son, who perished in an epidemic. He had children by his second wife. One of the sons migrated to the American colonies and served as an organist and composer in New York City. It is worth noting that Pachelbel's chorale variations are for manuals only, no pedals. The organs in South Germany were smaller than those in North and Central Germany, less developed, having fewer ranks and sometimes no pedals at all. Cembalo or harpsichord was a frequent substitute for the organ. Hymns were generally sung unaccompanied in unison. Pachelbel finished his career back in Nuremberg, where he began, where he was organist of St. Sebald's Church, or Sebaldus in Latin. In fact, he was sought out by the church authorities to serve there, so renowned was he in the region. All his life he was recognized and lauded for his music and musicianship. He wrote far more than canon and D.
In the interest of time, I'm going to skip ahead to the Buxtehude, Prelude, Fugue, and Chaconne, but I would like to invite anybody to come and sit in the choir loft. This piece is going to begin with a pedal solo, and you cannot see the pedal from where you're sitting. And it's very fun to watch. So I invite you to come and sit up here if you would like to. Thanks again for everyone coming. We invite you to join us afterwards for a light lunch in the narthex. The piece that I will be playing is in 3 main sections. There's a prelude, a fugue, and a chaconne. It's in the Stylus Fantasticus form, so you're going to hear a lot of improvisatory sections alternating with more strict imitative counterpoints. And I am highlighting the different sections by changing registration, so you'll see me playing some on the pedal, some on the great manual, some on the swell manual, and changing the stops that I use to show the contrast in the sound. Anybody has any questions or wants to see the organ up close, please come up. Otherwise, we'll see you out in the narthex. Thank you very much.